Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Good morning, Senator. Always great to talk to you.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be back on with you.
There are two important issues this morning. I've talked Iran sanctions with Dr. Oren, the Deputy Minister for Diplomacy in Israel, and Richard Haas this morning, and I talked yesterday with Sonny Perdue about the president's mental fitness. Let me take the latter second. I have cited you, two members of the cabinet, other senators and congressmen over the course of a year. Not once has any of you said anything remotely like Michael Wolff is saying about conversations about the 25th Amendment. How do you judge Mr. Wolff's credibility?
Well, Hugh, Michael Wolff is a New York gossip columnist who's been known to fabricate stories in the past. And in fact, he admits in his own preface to this book that looseness with the truth is an elemental thread of the book. I think that's nearly a direct quote. I would simply note that, the questions that the president is facing from liberals in the media is very similar to what Ronald Reagan faced, and at times what George Bush faced as well. And what they all have in common, one of the few things they all have in common, is that they're Republican presidents. So this is just something that recurs anytime the media and Democrats can't accept the fact that the American people elected a Republican to serve as our president.
It's so deeply irresponsible to me to say that the 25th Amendment is being discussed routinely when it isn't. It's just a lie. And I can't get over the fact that it is repeated without any apparent hesitation on the part of many people in the media.
Well, yeah, and I'll just give you an example with you. So Michael Wolff has said irresponsibly that 100% of the people around the president have these sentiments. I think in interviews since the book was released, he's also acknowledged that he didn't speak to a single cabinet member.
Yes.
Which is to say, I guess, 100% of the people that Michael Wolff sought out and were willing to talk to him. It seems to be a pretty small universe. But I don't know many reporters, for that matter, who have taken his so-called reporting seriously. And going back 15 years at least, much of his reporting on other topics has also been called into question as being the work of a fabulist.
Well, it is a one-week story, which hopefully has run its week. Let's turn to one that is a decades and centuries-long story, Iran. Dr. Oren began the hour by urging the Trump administration not to renew sanctions relief. Richard Haas, Counsel of Foreign Relations, said that would be a huge mistake. What does Senator Cotton think?
Well, so I do think the administration should move forward with additional sanctions, given some of the authorities they received last year for the crackdown that the regime undertook against people across their country. I think it's a closer call on the sanctions related to the nuclear deal. As you know, there is no stronger opponent to that deal than I. I encouraged the president in October not to certify it under U.S. law as being in our U.S. National security interest, and he didn't. Since then, we've been working on legislation that would try to improve our position strategically against Iran. We're still working on that. It's not an urgent matter in terms of the nuclear deal, but but whether he renews the sanctions waivers under the nuclear deal or not, the president should certainly impose new sanctions in the other authorities he has as punishment for what the regime has done during these protests over the last couple of weeks.
And then finally, I want to talk about the immigration negotiations. Jeff Flake has issued concerns that the bar is being set too high. Will Hurd was on earlier today saying it should be DACA and the border. Frankly, I do not see how you guys don't deal with the border security, DACA, chain migration, and diversity lottery in one bill, because they're all of a piece.
Yeah, so Hugh, the gang of amnesty here has had 4 months so far, and they have not yet made a single concession. They keep insisting the president make concessions, and the president, very rightly, is not going to negotiate against himself. He's laid out a very coherent package that draws upon proposals from David Perdue and me and others as well that would give some legal protected status to the DACA population. In return, it would help solve the problems that legal status is going to inevitably create. It's going to address the border wall and security and interior enforcement to reduce incentives to immigrate here illegally, which you're going to create if you give legal status to people here illegally, and ending chain migration, which you create a whole new set of chain immigrants if you give legal status to 1 million or 2 million illegal immigrants who are here in this country. That is not trying to do everything, but that is trying to solve a direct problem and mitigate the consequences of solving that problem. If the Gang of Amnesty wants a solution, then they're going to have to start negotiating in good faith and giving up more than they have given up to date. To date, they've said nothing but give us our amnesty, and you get nothing. You don't even get a fig leaf in return. You get a pine needle in return.
And so, as we approach January 19th, if a shutdown occurs, it will be the first shutdown that occurs on a Republican watch. And if that occurs, I think it'll be very different from other shutdowns. What do you think, Senator Cotton?
Well, so, Hugh, the Democrats are not going to shut down the government over amnesty for illegal immigrants. They had a chance to do that in December. They didn't. Why? Because they know that amnesty for illegal immigrants without real immigration reform and security is massively unpopular. So that's not going to happen. And if it does happen, then you're right. It'll be the Democrats who are demanding an extraneous, unrelated matter on a government funding bill who shut down the government, and they will bear the consequences.
Is this all posturing, Senator Cotton? Are we actually going to see a deal?
I mean, at this point, I have not seen good faith negotiating from the Gang of Amnesty. When they get serious about mitigating the consequences of the amnesty they're proposing, that's when you'll begin to know that there could be a deal.
Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure to speak with you. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 3 of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. Straight ahead.